Your story and your bio is pretty remarkable. You've done a lot of different things and you've lived a lot of different career paths, especially for someone young. And yet you did all these things with this underlying brain injury. So let's start with the brain injury and how you got it and how it kind of impacted the next phase of your life. And I want to start by thanking you for your service to our government, to our all the people. Just thank you for your service.
You're welcome. And just to clear this up, I'm 42 years old, so
Young,
I
like
do
I
not.
said, young.
um, okay, so the brain injury. The interesting thing about the brain injury is that I didn't know about it for so long. So of course, when I first found out about this by virtue of having a second one and then going through tests and then having brain scans, and it's just like, oh my goodness, this is what the problem, because there had been a lot of problems had been the whole time. It was very, I guess I was angry. I was bitter. There was a lot of feelings of guilt around not figuring it out sooner, and um, shame surrounding everything I'd accomplished in my life had been this pivot or adaptation. And what would I have been otherwise? And thankfully, I got rid of all of that. But the interesting thing I think about the brain injuries, I didn't know about it, and it really set the course of what my life was to become. But the story of the brain injury, now that we know what it is that there was a point on my first deployment where a lot of things changed for me very drastically, and it was very confusing. And what we do know is that I was too close to a missile that was being launched at one point, and that we do know is that at one point, I was unconscious after that. So had this caused a percussion issue that caused me to pass out, but it appeared I had fallen down through a hatch. To my knowledge, I just had a really achy neck, and things got worse from there. And I never equated the two. This is, right after things had started in Iraq. And we were over there. So it was a confusing time. And it was a time when I was somewhat obsessed with making sure it didn't seem like I was falling to bits. Given the nature of my command, I was a brand new officer in the military, and I would report things that were very almost acceptable to be reporting, like, oh, my digestion is screwed up. Oh, I'm having some breathing problems. I'm coughing a lot. What I didn't talk about was a lot of the emotional stuff that was going on. And what was very almost a secret that I was even keeping from myself was the problems I was having with reading and looking at words. Because the way I was shaped as a human, I equated academic intelligence to self-worth. So that was the almost untouchable topic, is why can I hardly read? And so all of these problems that I was facing, while trying to act like nothing was wrong and even convince myself like a cheerleader that nothing was wrong, went on to shape my life. And now this is just how it all unfolded, and I see it as a life that I chose, and not something that happened to me or anything like that.
So the interesting thing about how all of this started, and I think what's so unfortunate about many medical things is, had you fallen and broken your arm, it was like, oh, I'll go to the doctor, I'll fix my arm. But because this was such a kind of slow fade for you, it didn't present in an obvious way like a broken arm.
Right.
You never connected situation with medical stuff. And I think all of us do this. We can explain away things. Oh, I didn't sleep enough. Oh, I ate something. Oh, this. Oh, but I think the underlying thing that you talked about that so many people can relate to is, I didn't actually want to deal with the thing that I probably should have been dealing with.
Right. Absolutely. And I think the ability to be self-aware and admit to oneself what's going on, I didn't have that at the time. I was 23 years old. I was a hard charging sailor, and performance for me was more important than my emotional health. I wasn't even fully aware that there was a thing called emotional health or emotional awareness. I grew up a certain way, and then being a military officer, it kind of sets you on a certain behavior path. But yeah, I really think that my talking about it and sometimes discussing the things that came up. For example, I mean, I got back from deployment and I kept crashing my bike, and I had been a phenomenal athlete my whole life. It was a little like I was able to articulate more all of these digestion issues I was having. It's just that it didn't get connected to the head injury or head injuries. And a lot of these things can be explained away, especially in the realm of brain injury and concussion. There's a lot of overlapping symptoms with mental health issues, and of course, having an untreated head injury that's where the symptoms are persisting is eventually going to lead to mental health struggles if you value certain quality of life. So that is what happened. And it's not to say that I didn't have to work through mental health issues. It became almost the Venn diagram, just it became one.
Mm-hmm.
So that later down the road became a sizable pack full of stuff to unpack.
And you're also, I suspect, and based on photos I've seen of you during your military service, there's often a whole group of men and you. So if you're one of the few women in a male dominated environment, it's very easy also to have a strong desire, not want to be perceived as weak. Do you think that that fed into this? Had you been on a ship full of all women, may you have had a different awareness and response?
100%, 100%. I had always been a tomboy, and I had always more identified as an athlete, just as much as a scholar. But being in the military, it was, I mean, my dad was my idol growing up. So it's like I basically want to be a man when I grow up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it put me in a position where and of course hindsight's 2020, where I was always, and I do have a feminine aesthetic, so it's almost like, okay, I have to make up for that, and I have to prove, look guys, I am this great athlete. Look guys, I'm not one of those, I'm not a flirty girl, I'm like strong, I'm one of you. Because listening to my dad's stories of being on ships and stuff he had done, I what I was really longing for from the military. I mean, yeah, it's a job and you get paid and you get to go around the world, but it was a sense of camaraderie. And it's almost cute when I look back at younger Amanda for 20 years ago. It's like going around wanting to be one of the guys, and almost wanting to impress them so that they would know that like we're all friends. And a thing that I avoided was certainly talking about emotional health. And during this time I was really struggling, again, not even admitting it to myself. I was married on this deployment, and I was literally freaking out because I didn't have feelings of love anymore in me, and I didn't want to return from this deployment because how was I going to deal with that? How would I tell somebody that I know I cared about and still cared about, but how do I break this news? And like, these weren't the type of things I could talk to about anybody. And I wasn't really talking to them about myself. I was more letting the fear accumulate. So that's a little known, not little known, it's hugely known in the brain injury and concussion world, but the way personality changes can occur, but the way emotions and the way emotions are experienced can occur when your nervous system is so significantly hijacked or changed or altered.